What's the most important thing someone should be considering when they're dealing with a sponsor or when they're looking for a sponsor? Because Will, from the outside, I mean, he doesn't even have to try. He's so good with relationships. He's always on the phone. He's not a texter. He's on the phone. But he's managed to do such a good job at finding all these partners. His helmet's covered, and everyone loves him. But I do want to hear, because it's good, I think, for listeners that might be coming through junior ranks and they're trying to, find their way and find some sponsors and learn how to add value to them, because that's the hardest thing as well. Sometimes as a driver, what is the value we offer?
Yeah, because Steve, you've done a lot, obviously, too, with Cam Crick and the Super Ute program that you did.
I mean, I've done Kai, Davey Russell, Richie Stanaway when we got Richie back into the sport with Pete.
So what do they do to stand out?
Look, I suppose there's different motivations. One for why you sponsor people. So trying to, I suppose, with young people, if you're trying to align with a brand, trying to understand what their motivation is. And I was probably, when I was sponsoring more and not so much into the team ownership sort of world, I sort of split it between wanting people to promote my brand and for brand awareness, but also I just had a love and a passion and wanted to see people, try and achieve things that they would otherwise not be able to achieve. And I think one of the, I suppose, the hard things I would say for people is when they go and it's, and you're trying to sell something to a sponsor, whatever you commit to, the onus is on you to follow that up.
Yeah.
And so I've had a couple of tough conversations with kids and people I've sponsored and said, hey, mate, you told me you're going to do this and all that. Oh, you haven't asked me. I said, did you get paid? And they go, oh, yeah. I said, you didn't ask me to pay you.
Yeah.
We did an agreement. I paid you. You should be chasing me. And when can I do that? That's what you got to do. And I think that's where a lot of people go, oh, well, I've got the money now, so I'm going to go off and do something else. Look, you raised Cam Crick. Cam's an exception to the rule across everything because Cam just about lives in your office after you sponsor him.
I've noticed that.
It's like you adopt a child and he wants to do something for you every single day.
Yeah.
And you try to find things for him to do. Mate, I've never seen anyone work as hard as Cam does to, one, get the sponsorship and then he works so hard to follow you up to try and deliver on what he says. So, mate, he's an exceptional talent in that space. Not everyone's of the same ilk. But I would say this, a lot of young kids come and they offer you exactly the same thing. They produce a document that says, oh, this is how many people watch supercars, so if you sponsor me, it's going to go. It doesn't work. Mate, the truth is the return on the investment.
Yep.
I found with, it's so true, Steve, as you said, like there has to be a relationship there. And I think you touched on it earlier, Earl, as well, with when you were doing the stuff at Erebus with the people there. If there's not a relationship there, even if they are returning on what they say, it's probably not going to be a strong partnership.
And it can start small.
My current title sponsor started small 4 or 5 years ago. And, we just build that relationship. Now they're my title sponsor and we have this great relationship and it's amazing, but it's definitely a relationship over. I don't
name them?
Yeah, so
Pioneer DJ.
Pioneer DJ Jam.
I was just making the point, if you're going to go out, name them because, mate, there's no point in talking about them unless you're telling me who they are.
We do talk about a lot on the show. I didn't want to, but so like these microphones we're using, Jams, they are the Shaw distributor for Australia and New Zealand.
They're our first supporter on the pod. Got us the microphones.
It's a really good question. And from a different lens to it, and I think, we sponsor a lot. But again, going back to my involvement in motorsport 4 years ago, whilst I was a passionate fan, watched every supercar race, every Sandown, the 10 Sandown or the Hang 10 bloody 500s or whatever they were that bloody Peter Brock won. And for decades, to putting $15,000 on the front of Erebus, and now I'm into this thing for millions. I'm sponsoring bloody NASCARs and doing all this sort of stuff, which I personally pay for. It's under the Shaw and Partners banner, but it's out of my pocket, most of it. There's no benefit in me sponsoring a NASCAR. As a matter of fact, we just deposited a whole bunch of money for somebody to go and race an Infinity car overseas. So only 24 hours ago. But
awesome.
Yeah, which will be cool. But, I think there's two different types of sponsors. So if I could give any of your young budding listeners here or anybody else, a couple of layers. One, there's two types of sponsors. There's one that's just looking purely at the numerics. So they're the big brand, bulge brackets, the beer companies, the this, that, and the other that are looking for, in whatever sport it might be. If I look at Supercheap Auto or whatever, Hewlett-Packard, they're looking at absolute return, eyeballs. What's the return? Very hard to win their hearts and minds. They're very numerical focused. You're not normally dealing with an owner. You're dealing with somebody else that's representing a public company with money. So it's got to be fact-based. The second type of sponsor is the wood ducks like Steve and I that are emotionally involved. You're winning our hearts, mind and soul. And so you've got to find somehow a bit of a wedge into that. If you overlay that, if I was to give one bit of advice to any athlete, and I deal with a lot of them in Ironman, in women's basketball, in soccer, in rugby league, in supercars, and I've done it for years and years and years. The one thing, the difference between the good and the bad is communication skills. So if I could give any advice, if you want to look at a good investment banker, we can all add up. If you're an investment banker, normally you should be able to add up. The difference between a good and a bad is the ones that have put a lot of effort into upgrading and upskilling themselves on their communication skills. It's 80% of the job. So for people like us, if people, I look at James Courtney. We've got a great relationship with James, and you go to lunch with him, and before you know it, you barrel around. He's a character, he's a great driver. And before you know it, you've walked out sponsoring his visor or something. Gee whiz, how you going? What's happened there? Will does an exceptional job of following up his sponsors. So every year that we've sponsored Will, he'll send a helmet at the end of every year, or he'll send a framed picture of one of his victories, and he'll just turn up at your office. When he rings you for the money, you can't say no. As opposed to there's plenty of people that we sponsor who are great athletes, phenomenal human beings. You get nothing from them.
They neglect
They don't even give you a Christmas card. Will, he's texting you on Christmas Day. He's sending you a Christmas card. That's the difference between the good and the bad. One, he genuinely means it.
Yeah.
But for emotional sponsors like us, that's the difference between, you're really getting exposure for the job we did with Will last year in the NASCAR, or the Super 2 car with Jack.
Yep.
Jack's become a very, very dear friend to us. We just went up to Hawaii, actually. I took some mates up there from the 60th. He's added so much. For anything that I don't understand about cars, I just ask him, and he tells me from an engineering perspective or whatever it might be. And we've just become great mates. And so when he rings me and says, I'm thinking about doing this Super 2, whatever you want to put in, okay, right, mate, well, I'll underwrite it. Just whatever the shortfall is, I'll put in. But the value that he's had, the friendship, the creation, a little bit like you with Cam, in your house, living in your house or in your business. So I think they're the two, the feedback, lift your communication skills. And are you really giving value? If you're not giving value on eyeballs, for your brand, then you better be adding value on something else. And, like I said, when Will, who just become the champion, sends you a helmet at the end of the year and signed, you nearly have to go again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as my dad always said when I was very, very young, he said, Earl, whatever bill you get, add 10% on it. So why would you add 10% on every bill? Because you're prepaying your future. And that's the objective of giving the helmet or giving the frame jersey. Or, I just had a frame come to me yesterday. Oh, you dropped it off this morning, didn't you? Pick it up to come down here, which was a framed race suit that had been sent to me by somebody. And
actually come through ZMM, which is a memorabilia company, which is actually supporting the podcast. They're
really?
There you go.
Oh, cool.
They actually like the pod as well. And that is good to hear. I only thought of that question because it is a difficult one to kind of know where to start if you're looking for sponsorship. And the most important thing is to know what you need to offer. And I think you're right, that self-improvement is really, just investing in yourself is important.
Well, I think Quinny went to dinner with Liam Lawson last night, didn't he?
A couple of nights ago,
A couple of nights ago, right? And that started off as a sponsorship. Well, what's Quinny getting out of it? What he's getting out of it is satisfaction of giving back.
Yeah.
He's not making any money from it. He doesn't need the profile.
Yeah.
It's not selling him any extra cans of dog food or whatever he sells these days. He did it because he's a wealthy guy putting in, and he had a connection. And Liam Lawson, and I think you said, Quinny wasn't going to go to dinner, and he said to Steve, I'm a bit tired, I might just go from Adelaide straight home. And what did you say to him?
No, I told him, I said, mate, you can't. If someone wants to give back and say thanks, you've got to take that. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity, really.
Which is what Liam probably was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did see you on TV today with Liam actually Steve, you're in the pit lane.
You can expect big improvements in his racing tomorrow.
Transport, just like what you guys.
Seems like you guys are the lucky charms. I might just sort of rub against you as you leave just to make sure I get some luck this season.
There's a hard bite on the business side, but we're like a couple of jokers that walk up and down pit lane, love walking to people's pits and saying g'day. We think it's fantastic. I know there's a hard mongrel underneath for all of us, but sometimes people don't quite know how to sort of take us, and we love having a laugh and a hoot. Life's too short.
Bloody oath.
You know, Jade, who sort of runs my business, you know, she sort of calls me the Labrador. She says you run up and down pit lane just trying to get a pat on the head, smiling and wagging your tail, and then you come back to me and say, oh, here's a bill.
I got 200 trucks I need to lease out. What's going on?